we all share many similar values like safety, security, love, family, community, peace, integrity. We all share many similar values. But where we differ from one another is how we define some of those values and what our core values are. So while we share similar values like peace, but at what price? And maybe we say love's important, but how we define love could differ from one another. And most of all, we also are different in that what our core values are different from one another. So my top 3 to 5 core values could be different from someone else, yet we share many of the similar values. It's really important to know what your core values are, because that's what drives your decisions. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's your core values and your beliefs that drive your decision, that define your life. And quite often we're so bombarded with what we should value that sometimes it's almost deafening, and sometimes we fail to hear what our hearts, what our core values are as individuals. So it's really important for you to know what your core values are, your top 3 to 5 core values. I'd like to give you an example of a couple that came in to see me. And the first thing he said was, I'd like to make sure my mortgage is paid off within 5 years. And while they had a fabulous household income, I knew there had to be some sacrifice somewhere else in order to get what he wanted done. He said, I want that done because it coincides with when I retire. And so we looked at the calculator and I said, so what are you willing to give up in order to achieve this? And he says, well, we'll just not do any more traveling, no international traveling. And every year they'd go away for a month to Europe. And so he said, we just won't do any big traveling. And at that point his wife looked and said, wait a minute, you never spoke to me about this, you've never told me about this. I mean, they were a loving couple, but here he just assumed she'd go with it. He said, it was something my dad told me when I was growing up, that you just make sure your mortgage is paid off before you retire. And she says, I'm not willing to give up traveling. Okay, I love traveling, but I'm not going to assume that the value I put in traveling is the same as what she would see, the value she found in traveling. So I said, what is it about traveling you like? And she said, well, that's the one time we really connect. We're so busy all year round. He's always on his phone. He's so busy. And he was CEO of some company. So they're really busy people. And she said, when we travel and we go away for a month, that's when we really connect. And there's no way I am going to give that up for 5 years. And then she looked at him and says, what if we don't even make it for 5 years? Now, the point of this story is that here we are, 2 people, probably with very similar values, but at the same time, conflicting values. And I said, so it's interesting. I said, so what was it about the wanting to pay off in 5 years your mortgage? She said, well, that sounded like financial sense. It's something I was raised to believe. So there we go again. We all have values that we might have inherited, but they don't necessarily represent what we really want or feel. So you've heard all these ideas on what you should be doing, but what do you really want to do for your life? And you've only got one life. So what do you want to do for your life? So when I looked at them, I said, so, okay, we've all obviously got a bit of a quandary. So I said, and now that he listened to what she said, he said, and it wasn't like he was scared or anything, but he said, I never really questioned it. I said, what would it mean if you didn't get your mortgage paid off in 5 years? And he said, I didn't even question it. It's something I was raised to believe in. And he said, I I think I don't really want to give up the traveling. So when he really thought about it, he said, I don't want to give up the traveling. I said, you don't necessarily have to. Maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. But this story, to me, highlights how we don't always know what we value. Sometimes it's values we've inherited that when we think about it might not really agree with us. And not all couples share the same values. Personally, I think, you should choose someone with very similar values, but, but here we go. So when he was able to think about it a little more, he actually agreed with her. So they did share similar values, but he didn't realize it. But it was really neat that she felt she needed to speak up about what she valued. And again, to assume that I like traveling because it's adventure, real adventure. For her, the traveling was a time to connect with her husband. It was for the purpose of intimacy. And what he articulated in the first place about paying off the mortgage, it seemed like he really valued financial freedom, no more debt upon retirement. But now they might have some, but he said, I don't really care if I did have a bit of a mortgage. I mean, he was going to expect a great pension, but here he was, even before he thought of anything, even before he looked at the numbers, he just assumed his dad was right, get the mortgage paid off. And she said, we could be dead before then. So that's why it's really important to know what your top 3 to 5 core values are. Most of us want financial freedom, but at what cost? And most of us want peace, but at what price? And what love looks like to one another is quite completely different. I've met couples who love their children. They both say, right on, one of the top values of mine is love for my family. But what love looks like for one person can be totally different for another. For some people, I've met where love means financial freedom, and for some it means I love my kids and I want them to be secure. I want them to be independent, financially independent. So by the time these kids are 18, 19, the parents want them to learn how to be financially free and financially independent. And there's no judgment on that. No one should judge somebody else's values. And someone else, it means like, if they need help, I'm going to help them. And that's their definition of love. Both people love their families and their children, but what that looks like could be quite different from one another. And that's where sometimes conflict arises. It's really important to talk with your partner about what you really value and to know what they value. But more important is to be aware of what it is you value and what that looks like for me and for you. What does love look like for you? Get to know that and honor that. Honor your values and manage your money in accordance with what you truly value. And I've got values assessments on my website, www.compelling365.com. Get to know what your top 3 to 5 core values are and manage your money and other aspects of your life in accordance with what it is you value. For me, I value freedom. I really value freedom. And I value adventure. For me, adventure is fun. Traveling to different places, freedom from restrictions, either mental, physical restrictions or belief systems. I really value growth and freedom. And you need to know what you value. And I spend a lot of my money in accordance with what it is I value. Don't just adopt values you've been told to value. Get to know what you value and manage your money in accordance with that. And if you are in a relationship, a significant relationship, get to know what your partner values. See how you can come together. Because like this couple, they did come together. They did agree that, ultimately, we'd love our holidays and we want to maintain that. and they found other ways to pay some of their mortgage down, not all, but some of it. I'm Jennifer Thompson with Compelling 365 on knowing what it is you value.